The Galactic Concordance Station hung like a crystalline nightmare against the infinite black of space. Its 12-sided structure shifted and realigned constantly, a living testament to technologies so advanced they bordered on the mystical. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the primary diplomatic chamber, acutely aware that every movement, every breath was being analyzed by beings who saw humanity as little more than an amusing curiosity. The chamber itself was a marvel of alien engineering. Walls of liquid light rippled with holographic data streams, displaying star charts, diplomatic histories, and real-time communication networks. Gravity seemed optional here. Delegates from different species floated or stood or undulated according to their native physiologies, creating a mesmerizing tableau of extraterrestrial diversity. Tharak of the Syndicate Triumvirate dominated the central platform. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, the being was a nightmare of exoskeletal precision. Its body was a complex arrangement of crystalline segments that shifted and realigned with every subtle movement, each color change a language of its own. Right now, the creature's exterior was a mocking shade of iridescent blue, a color that, in its culture, signified absolute contempt. Human representative. Tharak's voice emerged as a series of clicks, whistles, and subsonic vibrations that only became comprehensible through the neural translation implants. The Galactic Council has completed its preliminary assessment of your species. Belina remained perfectly still. Her dark eyes, set in a face that carried the genetic markers of multiple Earth cultures, betrayed nothing. Behind her, the human delegation, a carefully selected group of diplomats, scientists, and military strategists, maintained an equally controlled demeanor. A holographic display shifted, expanding to show a microscopic representation of the solar system. Earth appeared as nothing more than a tiny, insignificant blue dot, surrounded by vast swathes of alien-controlled territories. Tharak's appendages moved in what could only be described as a gesture of profound dismissal. Your technological capabilities are marginally above primitive, the alien continued. Your species' potential for galactic integration is minimal. The Council has determined that you will be placed under direct administrative oversight. Your resources, technological developments, and potential expansion will be carefully managed. A subtle ripple passed through the human delegation. To an untrained eye, it might have appeared as nothing more than a collective breath. But to those who knew them, it was a complex communication, a silent strategy forming in micro-expressions and barely perceptible hand signals. Elena chose her moment carefully. When she spoke, her voice was calm, almost conversational. And if we refuse? Tharak's entire body shifted to a deep crimson, a color of absolute certainty and threat. Refusal is not a concept the Council entertains. Your compliance is mandatory. The threat hung in the air, backed by millennia of galactic dominance. Hundreds of species had been managed by the Council. Entire civilizations had been redirected, their potential curtailed, their ambitions carefully controlled. But something in Elena's eyes suggested that humanity might be different. The diplomatic chamber continued its silent dance of power. Holographic data streams continued to flow. Alien delegates from 100 worlds watched with varying degrees of curiosity and disdain. First contact had officially begun, and humanity's response was just taking shape. Dr. Aria Chen's laboratory looked like controlled chaos. Holographic displays danced around her, quantum equations intertwining with what appeared to be sheet music from an obscure 20th century jazz composition. The alien research team observing her work through remote surveillance couldn't make sense of the connections. Lead xenoanalyst Vrilks adjusted its multiple optical receptors, frustration evident in the way its silicon-based neural network pulsed with confused electromagnetic signals. Humans were supposed to be predictable, linear thinkers trapped in a single technological paradigm. Yet Dr. Chen was demolishing every preconceived notion with each passing moment. The breakthrough had come unexpectedly. A quantum entanglement problem that had stumped galactic researchers for centuries was now being approached through what could only be described as an impossible fusion of theoretical physics and musical theory. Chen's algorithm incorporated principles of jazz improvisation, specifically the concept of trading fours from bebop, as a mathematical model for quantum information transfer. "It's about responsive unpredictability," Chen muttered to herself, unaware of the alien observers. Her fingers danced across holographic interfaces, pulling apart and reassembling quantum states with a creativity that defied conventional scientific methodology. Across the globe, similar scenes were unfolding. In a small communication research center in Nigeria, Dr. Kwemosai was revolutionizing translation algorithms by applying principles of internet meme culture to interspecies communication. His team had discovered that the rapid, context-shifting nature of memes provided a unique approach to understanding complex linguistic and cultural nuances. The alien reconnaissance teams were becoming increasingly perplexed. Their initial reports had painted humanity as a species of limited potential, technologically adolescent, culturally fractured, seemingly more interested in internal conflicts than galactic advancement. Each new discovery was systematically undermining those assessments. In a classified military research facility, a team of engineers was developing a prototype energy system that combined principles from completely unrelated scientific disciplines. What appeared to be a failure, a chaotic mess of experimental technologies, was actually a breakthrough in adaptive systems design. Vrilux transmitted a heavily encrypted report back to the Galactic Council's research division. The language was clinical, but underlying the technical jargon was something close to alarm. Humanity demonstrates a technological approach that cannot be categorized by existing predictive models. The report read, "Their innovation appears to stem from a fundamental ability to make connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. Traditional methods of technological assessment are inadequate." The most disturbing aspect for the alien researchers was the humans' apparent lack of awareness of their own potential. These breakthroughs weren't the result of a centralized, coordinated effort. They were emerging spontaneously from individuals and small teams working with limited resources and an almost playful disregard for established scientific boundaries. Dr. Chen looked up from her work, a slight smile crossing her face. She had no idea that halfway across the galaxy, alien researchers were reassessing everything they thought they knew about human capability. The quantum equations continued to dance. The jazz music played softly in the background. And humanity, entirely unaware, continued to reshape the boundaries of possibility. The quantum cascade began without warning. Deep in the uncharted regions between spiral arms, space itself began to fracture. Astronomical monitoring stations across multiple civilizations detected the first anomalies, quantum instabilities that defied every known law of physics. Entire star systems watched in horror as the fabric of space-time began to unravel, consuming everything in its path like a metastasizing cancer of reality. The Galactic Council's emergency response team assembled with practiced efficiency. Holographic displays showed the expanding anomaly, a monstrous web of quantum discontinuities that was consuming entire stellar regions. Traditional containment protocols, developed over millennia of galactic conflict and scientific understanding, seemed woefully inadequate. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, no relation to Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, but carrying the same fire in his eyes, stood at the center of humanity's response team. A quantum physicist with a background in systems theory and a controversial reputation for radical thinking, he was an unlikely hero. Surrounding him was a team that defied every conventional approach to crisis management: a retired jazz musician, a climate systems engineer, a theoretical linguist, and a former competitive strategy game designer. "We're not looking at a problem," Marcus announced to the assembled human and alien researchers. "We're looking at a conversation." The alien scientists exchanged bewildered glances. The human team members nodded, their minds already racing through interconnected possibilities. The quantum cascade was consuming space-time at an exponential rate. Traditional containment methods, massive energy barriers, quantum stabilization fields, dimensional dampeners, had failed spectacularly. Each attempt only seemed to accelerate the anomaly's growth, as if the universe itself was resisting external control. Marcus's approach was maddeningly simple and incomprehensibly complex, drawing from principles of musical improvisation, climate system adaptability, linguistic pattern recognition, and strategic game theory. The team proposed a solution that seemed more like abstract art than scientific intervention. "We need to negotiate with the anomaly," he explained, his hands moving in complex gestures that were part scientific notation, part interpretive dance. Not contain it, not fight it. Communicate with it. The alien scientific delegation was on the verge of dismissal when the first preliminary results began to emerge. The human team was treating the quantum cascade not as a threat to be destroyed, but as a complex system to be understood, engaged, and ultimately redirected. Their method involved creating a multi-layered communication matrix that would respond to the anomaly's quantum fluctuations with a form of adaptive resonance. It was part scientific intervention, part linguistic negotiation, part improvisational performance. As the first experimental probes were launched, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The quantum cascade began to change, not collapse, not be contained, but transform. The alien observers watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as the impossible began to unfold. Humanity wasn't fighting the cosmic threat. They were conversing with it, understanding it, becoming part of its complex quantum language. Dr. Rodriguez looked up, a slight smile crossing his face. "Sometimes," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else, "you don't solve a problem. You change its fundamental nature." The universe listened. The resonance engine hummed with a sound that was more feeling than noise. Dr. Camila Nowick stood before her creation, a device that looked like nothing so much as an impossible sculpture, organic curves of metamaterial that seemed to breathe and shift even when perfectly still. Around her, the most advanced scientific minds from Earth and beyond watched with a mixture of anticipation and disbelief. The breakthrough had come from an unlikely convergence. Nowick had combined insights from seemingly unrelated fields: deep-sea organism adaptation, quantum mechanical principles, indigenous knowledge about harmonic resonance, and the complex neural networks of slime moles. Where traditional scientists saw disconnected domains, she saw a symphony of possibility. "It's not just an energy generator," Nowick explained to the assembled researchers, her voice calm and almost musical. "It's a communication platform, a negotiation with fundamental physical laws." The resonance engine challenged every established understanding of energy, communication, and spatial manipulation. Its core was a living matrix of engineered materials that could generate virtually unlimited clean energy, create stable wormhole communication networks, manipulate local gravitational fields, adapt and respond to environmental changes with near-sentient precision. Senior xenoanalyst Frilix, who had been monitoring human technological developments, felt something close to panic. The device before them wasn't just a technological advancement, it was a complete paradigm shift. Initial tests had been beyond promising. In controlled experiments, the resonance engine had demonstrated the ability to generate energy with 99.99997% efficiency, create micro-wormhole communication channels that bypassed traditional space-time constraints, locally modify gravitational fields with precision that bordered on the miraculous. But what truly terrified the galactic scientific community was the device's adaptive nature. It didn't just generate energy, it learned. Each energy cycle was slightly different, the device constantly optimizing, constantly evolving. A holographic display showed the engine's internal structure, a complex, living network that resembled both a neural system and a cosmic communication array. Fractals of impossible complexity danced within its core, suggesting mathematical relationships that defied current understanding. "We're not just generating energy," Nowick said quietly. We're establishing a dialogue with the fundamental fabric of reality. The alien researchers were divided. Some saw the potential for unimaginable technological advancement. Others saw an existential threat to everything they understood about physics, energy, and technological development. Vrilux transmitted an encrypted report to the Galactic Council. Critical alert. Human technological development has exceeded all predictive models. The resonance engine represents a fundamental reimagining of energy, communication, and spatial manipulation. Previous assessment of human technological potential is hereby declared obsolete. In the laboratory, Dr. Nowak watched the resonance engine pulse with a light that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the visible spectrum. It wasn't just a machine. It was a bridge between known and unknown, between possibility and reality. The universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what humanity would do next. The Cultural Immersion Project was never meant to be a weapon of understanding. Yet, as the alien research teams delved deeper into human society, they discovered something far more complex than any of their sophisticated analysis algorithms could comprehend. Dr. Lena Kowalski, the lead anthropological researcher, had designed the project as a comprehensive study of human cultural dynamics. What emerged was nothing short of a civilizational enigma that defied every existing model of societal development. The holographic displays in the research center flickered with thousands of simultaneous data streams. Each stream told a different story. A street musician in Rio de Janeiro playing a fusion of traditional samba and quantum physics-inspired rhythms. A community in rural Kenya solving agricultural challenges through a complex network of shared digital platforms and ancient ecological knowledge. A group of programmers in Mumbai creating open-source medical technologies while simultaneously engaging in elaborate cosplay performances. Senior xenoanalyst Zexril watched in mounting confusion. Humans seemed to exist in a state of perpetual controlled chaos. Their societies weren't hierarchical structures but living, breathing ecosystems of constant negotiation and reinvention. The most baffling discovery was human resilience. The research team documented case after case of individuals and communities transforming seemingly insurmountable challenges into opportunities for growth. A refugee community that developed a revolutionary urban farming technique. A group of former coal miners who became leading renewable energy engineers. Children in conflict zones creating international peace communication networks. They don't just adapt, Dr. Kowalski explained to her bewildered alien colleagues. They transform. Adaptation implies surviving. Humans are about thriving. The emotional intelligence of humans proved equally incomprehensible. Their communication systems were multi-layered universes of meaning. A single phrase could simultaneously convey humor, empathy, strategic information, and cultural context. Linguistic algorithms collapsed trying to decode the complexity of human interaction. Most shocking was their capacity for simultaneous conflict and cooperation. Alien sociological models suggested that diverse groups with competing interests should naturally descend into chaos. Humans seemed to turn this potential conflict into a generative force of innovation. A particularly striking example emerged from a small community project. When faced with a critical water shortage, instead of competing, a diverse group of residents, representing multiple ethnic backgrounds, economic classes, and professional disciplines, created a collaborative solution that not only solved their immediate problem but generated new economic opportunities and scientific insights. Zexril's neural network struggled to process the data. Humans defied every predictive model. They were not a species that could be categorized or controlled. They were a dynamic, ever-evolving system of potential. The cultural mapping revealed layers of complexity that suggested humanity was less a singular civilization and more a living, breathing multiverse of potential. Their strength wasn't in uniformity, but in their radical diversity, their ability to contain contradictions, to learn, to reimagine themselves continuously. As the final report was compiled, Dr. Kowalski added a note that would send shockwaves through the Galactic Council's research divisions. Humanity is not a species to be understood. They are a continuous process of becoming. The universe watched and waited. The ultimatum arrived with the subtlety of a quantum knife. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez sat in the primary communication chamber of Earth's diplomatic corps, surrounded by a team that looked more like a collection of global problem solvers than traditional diplomats. Military strategists, quantum physicists, cultural anthropologists, and network systems experts formed a human mosaic of intellectual firepower. The Galactic Council's final demand was elegant in its brutality: complete submission, total technological oversight, permanent restriction on human expansion and innovation. The message was encoded in a multi-dimensional communication matrix that would have crushed the spirit of any other known civilization. But humanity was not any other civilization. "They're playing three-dimensional chess," said Dr. Marcus Chen, a strategic systems analyst. "We're going to play quantum Go." The response was already taking shape, not as a direct confrontation, but as a multi-layered strategy that would systematically deconstruct the Council's power mechanisms. It wasn't about winning a battle. It was about fundamentally changing the nature of the game. The plan had several simultaneous tracks. 1. Technological leverage. The resonance engine's capabilities would be strategically revealed, not as a weapon, but as a potential collaborative platform. Each technological demonstration would expose the limitations of the existing galactic power structures while simultaneously offering unprecedented opportunities for advancement. 2. Diplomatic manipulation. A network of carefully cultivated relationships across various alien civilizations would be activated, not through traditional diplomatic channels, but through a complex web of scientific collaborations, cultural exchanges, and strategic information sharing that would gradually erode the Council's monolithic control. 3. Economic recalibration. Human economic models, which combine principles of cooperative capitalism, advanced network theory, and adaptive resource allocation, would be introduced as an alternative to the rigid economic structures of the Galactic Council. 4. Cultural subversion. The most potent weapon was humanity's capacity for narrative transformation. Instead of fighting the Council's narrative, they would systematically reframe the entire conversation about technological development, species potential, and galactic cooperation. Tsar Ak, the lead alien diplomat, would later describe the human response as watching a quantum superposition of multiple strategic realities simultaneously coming into focus. The first move was deceptively simple. A series of scientific publications would be released, not as a direct challenge, but as collaborative research invitations. Each paper would subtly expose the structural limitations of current galactic technological paradigms while offering innovative solutions. Simultaneously, a distributed network of human researchers would begin engaging with scientific and cultural communities across different alien civilizations, not as conquerors or competitors, but as genuine collaborators. The economic track involved creating open-source technological platforms that would be irresistibly beneficial to multiple galactic civilizations. Each platform would incrementally reduce the Council's centralized control while offering unprecedented opportunities for collaborative development. "We're not declaring war," Elena Rodriguez explained to her team. "We're obsoleting their entire power structure." As the first wave of strategic responses began to propagate across galactic communication networks, something extraordinary started to happen. The rigid structures of the Galactic Council began to show microscopic fractures. Humanity wasn't fighting the system. They were redesigning it, one quantum possibility at a time. The universe held its breath. The fracturing of the Galactic Council began with a whisper, not a roar. Deep within the crystalline chambers of the Concordance Station, the first cracks of fundamental change began to appear. Diplomatic delegations that had once stood in rigid hierarchical formations now found themselves in fluid, dynamic conversations. The once immutable power structures were becoming something else entirely, a living, breathing network of potential. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez moved through the diplomatic corridors like a quantum wave of possibility. Behind her, a diverse team of human representatives, Scientists, cultural experts, strategic thinkers demonstrated an approach to galactic interaction that was simultaneously more nuanced and more direct than anything the Council had ever encountered. Vrillix, the senior xenoanalyst who had first documented humanity's unusual capabilities, now found itself in a position of unexpected advocacy. The alien's neural network had been fundamentally transformed by its study of human complexity. What had begun as a research assignment had become something closer to genuine fascination. They don't conquer, Vrillix explained to the fractious Council subcommittees. They collaborate. They don't replace existing systems. They transform them. The evidence was everywhere. Technological platforms developed by human teams were being adopted across multiple civilizations. The Resonance Engine had become a collaborative research project that was reshaping understanding of energy and communication. Scientific publications from human researchers were generating more cross-civilizational dialogue than centuries of formal diplomatic exchanges. Most disturbing to the traditional Council members was how humans approached power. They didn't seek to dominate. They sought to create ecosystems of mutual development. Each technological or cultural exchange was simultaneously an invitation and a challenge, a way of saying, "Let's solve this together." Entire alien scientific disciplines were being reimagined. The rigid boundaries between technology, culture, communication, and strategy were dissolving. Humans had introduced a new way of thinking that was less about control and more about potential. Some Council factions resisted violently. They saw humanity as an existential threat to their established order. Others began to see an unprecedented opportunity for galactic transformation. A pivotal moment came during a diplomatic summit that was supposed to formalize humanity's managed status. Instead, the human delegation turned the entire proceedings into a collaborative workshop. They didn't argue. They demonstrated. They didn't demand. They invited. Dr. Camila Noack, developer of the Resonance Engine, presented not as a conqueror, but as a research partner. Her presentation was part scientific demonstration, part cultural exchange, part collective problem-solving session. "We're not here to replace your systems," she explained, her holographic presentation shifting and breathing like a living thing. "We're here to expand what's possible." The most radical element was humanity's approach to failure. Where other civilizations saw obstacles, humans saw opportunities for innovation. Where others sought to control, humans sought to understand and collaborate. Zarak, once the most dismissive of human potential, now found itself a reluctant advocate. The aliens' report to the inner council chambers was both a warning and an invitation. Humanity is not a threat to be contained. They are a transformation waiting to happen. As the diplomatic session concluded, something fundamental had changed. The Galactic Council was no longer a fixed structure, but a living network of potential. The universe watched and began to reimagine itself. 50 years after the first encounter, humanity had become the unexpected architects of a new galactic civilization. The Concordance Network, a living, breathing system of technological, cultural, and diplomatic exchange, pulsed with possibilities that would have been unimaginable just decades earlier. What had begun as humanity's struggle for recognition had transformed into a fundamental reimagining of interstellar cooperation. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, now in her 70s, watched the holographic displays from the Adaptive Diplomacy Center. Her team was no longer just diplomats. They were translators of potential, architects of collaborative futures. The changes were profound and multi-layered. Technological development had become a truly collaborative process. The Resonance Engine, once a closely guarded human innovation, was now a shared platform of continuous discovery. Research stations across multiple star systems worked in real time, their communication networks transcending traditional barriers of distance and species. Economic systems had been reimagined. The rigid hierarchical structures of the Galactic Council had given way to adaptive, network-based models of resource allocation. Value was no longer measured solely in material wealth, but in innovative potential, cultural exchange, and collective problem-solving. Cultural exchanges had become the primary form of interstellar diplomacy. Where once there were rigid protocols and controlled interactions, now there were dynamic platforms of mutual learning. Schools across different civilizations shared curriculum. Artists collaborated across species lines, and scientific teams formed fluid, purpose-driven collectives that dissolved and reformed based on the challenges they addressed. Vrillix, now a lead coordinator in the Collaborative Research Initiative, reflected on the transformation. The aliens' neural network, once a rigid system of classification and control, had become something more fluid, a living network of possibilities. Humanity didn't conquer, Vrillix would often explain to younger researchers. They invited. They transformed the very concept of interaction. The most radical change was in approach to challenges. Where previous galactic civilizations saw obstacles as things to be controlled or eliminated, the new paradigm saw them as opportunities for collective growth. The quantum cascade, once an existential threat, had become a field of continuous scientific and philosophical exploration. Dr. Camila Noack's grandchildren now led research teams that barely resembled traditional scientific organizations. They were part researchers, part artists, part cultural translators, working across disciplines and species lines with a fluidity that would have been incomprehensible to previous generations. A young researcher from a methane-breathing civilization turned to Elena Rodriguez during a collaborative session. "How did you know?" she asked. "How did you know this was possible?" Elena smiled, a gesture that translated across species lines. "We didn't know," she replied. "We just refused to accept that it wasn't." The holographic displays showed a living map of the Concordance network, a constantly shifting, breathing entity of connection and potential. Star systems that had once been isolated now pulsed with collaborative energy. Research stations, cultural exchange platforms, adaptive diplomatic centers, all working in a complex, living system of mutual development. Kavzarak, now a senior advisor in the transformed governance structure, watched the displays. The aliens' perspective had transformed from dismissal to genuine wonder. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had invited it to reimagine itself. The universe continued to expand, not just in physical space, but in possibility.